Hello, my lovely artist friends. This is Carrie here from Artist Strong. You are now joining me for Feedback Friday. I host Feedback Friday you guessed it, Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this fall, and it's an opportunity to help artists like you build your skill and develop your unique artist voice. You can ask me questions. I post kind of a Q&A post every Wednesday on the Facebook page and in the Facebook group. And it's an opportunity for you to ask questions, post artwork that's in progress, share art with me where you want feedback kind of on your style and what do I see, or feedback on your artist website, or just a question you might have about artistic process or feeling stuck in your art. So this is a free opportunity to get that kind of feedback to help you kickstart your art and keep making and keep growing. I have loads of artists today that have asked for different advice and help, and I really look forward to sharing all this feedback with you guys. So my website gets a little wonky. You're going to see the screen go weird in a minute, so just bear with me here. So the first thing I want us to look at is this feedback from Vicky. So I'm going to make it bigger so that's what we really see on the screen, and hopefully you don't get lost in kind of the funny screen that pops up. So Vicky asked, I'd love a critique of my art website and of my artwork. I think my main question about the artwork would be, should I settle on one type of work in order to be more cohesive in selling my art, such as work in a series? Thanks for any suggestions you can provide. So I'm going to go straight to her website. So Victoria has a wonderful opening homepage. We immediately come to kind of a clean, open, airy feeling space, which is very kind of comparable to a gallery setting, which is quite nice, and a big, beautiful, colorful artwork. I'm kind of bummed it doesn't fit on my screen. I don't know if she has something that's kind of mobile reactive or will change according to screen size. You can kind of, I use something called Divi Builder for my website that helps so that makes sure that if I'm on a mobile phone or if I change the size of my browser, the images stay to the same size. So I've had to shrink it a bit to see this work. I just want to say I love how bold this is and rich, and from the very start, we have a sense of Victoria and her art, and we might want to know more. So when we scroll down, she has a lovely quote from Wassily Kandinsky, and then has a contact me about questions. Something I would recommend to everyone is on your homepage, you want to have some kind of call to action. So even though there's all these links at the top, there's nothing necessarily that is telling me to go click there. And so if I've scrolled all the way down because I wanted to see the work and I've enjoyed it and I've read all these things, it might be really nice to actually have a button kind of at the bottom of this page that leads to a gallery or to a blog post. So that it lets people and encourages people to keep digging into your website, because that's part of what you want, right? Is you don't want people to come and look at this beautiful painting and go, okay, I'm done. You want to encourage them to dig further. And it sounds silly, but having a button that says, okay, go here next to check out more work in the gallery, that literally increases people's choice to make that choice. So think about how we can help encourage people to have a really easy, fun kind of flow experience moving through our website, just as we hope that they kind of have those feelings about our art. So Victoria said in terms of her website, she has kind of two different groups of art, and I think she was worried about continuity. So I'm going to get that. Let's see if I can find that comment again from her. Do I need to settle on one type of work in order to be more cohesive? I don't think that you have to. What I would say is I do think it helps to sell art in certain groups and styles of things. So here we have kind of a whole bunch of work that is very gestural, definitely has a lot of abstraction in it. And I think that that's cohesive by itself. However, if you wanted to do something to help promote the work, it might be interesting to, select some of the work that's very vertical together, or choose some of the works by color scheme. So if you have certain palettes that seem to look good together, like these kinds of blues together, you could pick something and then tie it to, this one's called Coral. So you could have some stories around ocean or nature that's tied to, this kind of imagery, cosmos, and then create create a story around that in a way to promote the work. So I hate when people feel like they have to do a certain kind of art, or they're not allowed to do all the art that they want to make because supposedly that's going to help them market themselves. I think that's a load of bunk, and I think that it stops artists from actually making the art they really want to make. And that's what I think is most important. And when we make that heart-filled art that we feel called to create, that's the stuff people are really interested in. So I think it's more important to think about what kind of strategies can we use? What kind of experiments can we make in our marketing that might help us communicate story with some of the art to help people invest in the work we create? So for example, I have 3 different kinds of art on my own website, which I actually didn't even think to pull up, but I'll show you guys real quick. So I actually have textile work, I do portraits, and I do landscapes, and they're all very different. So I think you can have them all on your website and have a choice about how you handle them. So if we just scroll real quick, you can see here. So I have mandalas that overlap. So while it's textiles and then paper, they kind of have the same theme. But then I have this series called Wanderlust that looks totally different than that work. And people have bought from all of these groups from me. So I'm sharing that to make the point that you really can make the art you want to make and don't feel like you have to change something. I do think that you don't have to consciously work in a series, but after you make a bunch of work, if you can then group work in a series, that helps create kind of a beginning, middle, and end for viewers and potential collectors. And it also gives you a way to communicate story and think about how you do want to present your art for sale. A lot of artists will just put their work up on their website and go, okay, it's for sale. But that's the beginning of marketing. We need to kind of make posts and, say you're a really kind of big and enjoy your time on Instagram, well, then why not have a post once a week about one of these artworks, have a post that shows the work, and then have a really lovely story that explains the work or talks about your process and helps people engage with you and get to know you and your art. Because personally, I've found that people who like me and like the things that I do, they also want to buy my art. So it's about building and fostering relationships and building trust with people. And we can do that by letting them in on the journey of our creation. I really like Victoria's website in terms of how clean it is, and it does have kind of that gallery feel. And I do see a lot of consistency in the kinds of mark making she does. And it looks like we can click and kind of pick certain themes. I'm very drawn to this piece. It's nice that we can click to see closer too. I do think there's a lot of nice things going on with this website. I do wish that we could see maybe some titles or again some more storytelling, because I do think that would help if your goal is to promote and sell your work. If that's not your goal and you want it to be kind of a gallery space that maybe is a way to show off your work or help you be a nice way for people who might be tied to galleries, or if you're applying to different shows, to come at least glance story and understand kind of more about your artist statement and things like that as well. So those are some things I'd encourage Victoria to put in here. She's got a beautiful space. It looks really nice, and it's really showcasing her art. Oh, great. And how lovely. She has a great photo of her with her art on her contact page too. So I think all of those are really good decisions. I kind of wish too, almost on her bio site, she had another photo of herself. That's just another way for people to connect with her as an individual and start to really kind of feel that trust, start building that relationship. I think that would kind of really round out and just take this whole website to another level. So I hope this gives Victoria some ideas, and I really look forward to hearing from you, Victoria, about how you feel about some of the feedback I've suggested. And I want all of you to remember, I'm not some guru. This is personally driven by experiences I've had and my knowledge and research. But that doesn't mean I have all the answers either. If something doesn't resonate with you, that means you need to do some homework to figure out what the answer is for you. So make sure that when you hear feedback from people, you realize it's information, and it's information that's based in their own personal experience in life. So my own preconceived notions about things could get in the way of the feedback that I'm trying to offer today. And so it's something I'm aware of, and I try to make sure I keep conscious about when I offer feedback, but that's something all of you should consider too when you offer feedback and when you receive it. If something triggers you, ask yourself, why does that trigger me? What about that is a trigger for me? Because that could also be really important information for you to learn. Catch my breath here a minute. Again, love the lightness and the kind of white space of this and how it really lets the colors and richness of the work come forward. So thank you, Victoria, for sharing your art with us and, kind of being in the space with us. I'm going to link to her in the chat roll here. So if you want to go to her website, you can take a look a little more closely. Yeah. Okay. So Victoria, we've got covered here. So I'm going to close that out. And next we have an artist named Carol. She's been doing regular sketching and started attending a sketching group that meets every other Saturday at her library. And she just did a sketch based on the cover of a book she's reading. Her comment was, "The sketch is far from perfect, but I'm pleased overall. I've really come to enjoy sketching very much and want to improve." So she just kind of wants some general feedback. So let's talk about what we really like about the work and kind of see where we want to go from there. I love that she's kind of found her art interest again. I kind of think this might have been taken a photo of in bad lighting. So I'm going to hit auto tone and see if that helps us see the work better. So one of the first things I'll say here is, if I'm going to hit undo, and you'll see how dark it is. If that really is the gray paper, do you see the difference when we add the auto tone and it creates some stronger highlights? Make sure when we're drawing or sketching or any of those things, if we're trying to do something that has qualities of realism, we want to make sure we have lots of those strong lights and darks. Hi, Susan. Thanks for joining. I really love the hair in this. I think the hair has a lovely, lovely texture. I think that it's very well done, and it really feels like it's placed on top of her head. And I think that's a really strong part to this piece. Something I'm a little curious about for future reference for her is the placement of the nose. I feel like the nose is like really long and keeps going over here. And I don't know. I think, one of the very first Feedback Fridays, I took a 3/4 view of a photograph of someone and I superimposed it on top and kind of changed the opacity so we could see the placement. But I think this nose is either too long or it's just it's so strong and straight. It might be something to look at for refining, but I really like the shadows for the eyes and the mark and texture of the hair. All of that's looking quite nice. And the hand is actually a very challenging pose. Hands are kind of seen as something really difficult to do to begin with. So that could even just be a whole area of study. I really do have the sense that she's holding the lapel of her coat. And I have a really nice feeling of texture on her coat as well. So there's lots of lovely mark making going on in here. And for someone who identifies as beginner, I think that this is really quite impressive. I'm so glad you found your joy in sketching and play again, and that library group's helping you. And I hope you'll continue to share your work with us. If I were thinking about this in terms of skill development and wanting to build my skill, I would focus on studying noses maybe a little bit, especially on a 3/4 perspective, and just do some sketches of just noses. And I would also do some hand studies, because hands, we can learn so much from drawing and observing hands. So I think that would be a great way for Carol to kind of move forward with her work. The hair is great. And even I'm really loving even just the shadows in here. Like this whole forehead area and head really has a sense of 3-dimension. This doesn't feel like it's just randomly placed. It really has that sense of realism in it. There's some flesh and blood there that the hair is sitting on top of, which sometimes is hard to feel like we can portray. So yeah, I think this works great. And I'm really happy that you shared it with us. So I'm going to close that one out and then see who else we have. Okay, Jennifer's up next. She'd welcome feedback on this 2-panel abstract. I'm never quite sure when to leave well enough alone on abstracts and would welcome any suggestions. So is something missing here that could add interest, depth, or resting space? Thank you very much. So let's see if we can find her here. Okay, so the first thing I want to note is you're going to notice on the screen the color looks different than the photo in this page. So I'm going to undo it and you'll see this is lighting that doesn't necessarily show us true colors, and it looks darker, and it's coming just from kind of inside a home or some kind of building space. So I actually hit auto tone on this as well, and that's more likely giving us an accurate sense of color in this work. Something I really like about it from the beginning is the sense of flow and how the two abstracts really seem to connect together. There's something about that. They really do feel kind of joined. And I don't know how many of you see this. It'll be interesting to see if other people see it before I say it, but I actually see a heart in this image, and I don't know if that's something Jen wanted or not. So that's something for her to just take note of, and it'll be interesting to see how many of you think you see that as well. Something I particularly love is this corner and how much of the painting is going off the corner of this surface. There's part of me that wishes, I don't know, maybe a little more down here. It's kind of just touching, or I don't know. I think this one seems enough. There's kind of a rule of thumb with composition that odd numbers rule. And so because there's two areas that really extend off the surface, I kind of wish there's a third one that was a little more emphatic or emphasized. And I could see down here maybe being a little more emphasized. Yeah, I don't know. That's just one thought. Let's look at this image in black and white too and see. I like the color palette a lot. It's limited, it's kind of earthy, but let's look at colors for a minute. Okay, so in this, what's interesting is we can see she's got lots of dark grays and black tones in this piece and very few lights. So I actually wonder about that. Would it be nice to have, I really like the touch of the lights in the image. I'm going to go forward again so we can look at that. I really like the touch of lights in here. I think they look quite lovely, and I wouldn't want more in there per se, but there's part of me that wonders, you can see some texture here. There's part of me that wants more of some of this texture, but a very soft touch, kind of very subtle, maybe in some of these spots more like this, but with some lighter value, some lighter toned colors. I'm going to go back again so we can see it in color. Just some brightness somewhere in it for me. But I do think that could potentially be a point of personal taste and not necessarily a compositional decision that needs to be made. So that's something for you to think about. Again, I love your selective use of color. Personally, I do wonder, there's part of me that thinks there's a little more work to be done, but I don't want you to overwork it. I kind of have a rule of thumb for my own work, whether it's realistic or abstract, that if I think I'm going to make another mark and it's going to hurt or start detracting the work, it's time to either say it's finished or it's time to take a long break from it. So that's something I want all of you to be thinking about too. Now, during these Feedback Fridays, remember, you guys are more than welcome to jump in and offer ideas that you might have for a work too. Your feedback can offer Jen and everyone else here with other ideas and information that will also be valuable. So please don't hesitate to offer and share those comments. Please consider, just as I've been doing, what can you provide that's information that might help them make better decisions for their art? So it's not a value-based judgment, it's about providing information that can help them make decisions. Thank you, Jen, for sharing. And yeah, I think that's all I've got on that one. Those were kind of the things I was thinking about. I love these reds and oranges with this kind of muted green. I think it's so lovely and rich, and some of these brushstrokes are really gorgeous. So I do look forward to seeing where you might go with this. Okay, so we'll close Jen out. And we'll close out our question here. Okay, so we've got someone here with two works. So I'm going to try to take out both and see how we do. Shrink this a little. Okay, let me shrink that one a little. Oops, there we go. I'm gonna hide that too. Okay. I can't remember. I think this might be Joan. I'm sorry if I'm not remembering your your name correctly, but here we go. She said, "Hi, Carrie. I really enjoyed the last video on overlaying a photo insert on a painting of a woman's face. I've always dabbled in acrylics and watercolors, but over the past year, I've created about 8 or 10 paintings and have several in progress. This is a huge step up in time spent on my art." Yay! Excellent. Keep on doing that. "I've always felt my art was cartoonish, even amateurish. I've attached a couple from a big series I worked on and appreciate feedback." So something I want to note here and kind of remind you all as well is when you share finished artwork, sometimes it's harder to receive feedback on it, because when people give you feedback, often it's about helping you make decisions on how to improve it or how to help you finish it. And so by the very nature of asking for feedback on something finished, you're it's almost saying without saying that you think something's either wrong with the work or you want to know how you might improve it, and keep working on it. So keep that in mind for yourselves if you're getting feedback on finished art, because I think that can also be somewhat triggering, because we are so proud of finishing it and it feels good to be done. But then we hear feedback that gives us ideas of like, oh, we could have fixed this or that, and then start feeling kind of crappy about things. And I don't want you guys to feel that way. So please think about that when you offer me art for feedback or other people, and make sure that you are prepared for feedback that can help inform future artwork, or also just help you see kind of the wonderful lessons you've learned in the art you've already made, because every artwork is a stepping stone, in that journey of growth and learning. So it's it's always going to be this way. It doesn't matter if you're making art 10 years from now or 50 years from now. That's always going to be kind of the feeling, is you'll look back at older work and be like, oh, I've come so far, I don't want to look at those anymore sometimes. And that's just natural to be able to see our growth and know that we've grown. So don't see that as a sign of failure in any way. Understand that you're growing, and all of your art shows those stepping stones of growth and kind of new investigations and understanding. I wanted to share this in part because of the way she said, "I've always felt my art was cartoonish, even amateurish." So there are plenty of famous, wealthy artists whose art could be described as cartoonish or amateurish. Basquiat is a wonderful example to me of both of those traits. So understand, we need to understand our own definition of what is supposedly good art, or what we're really aiming for with our art. So that helps us decide on how to practice and what kind of future art we want to make. Because she said those things, it makes me think she wants to be more realistic with her art. And I would say these paintings are currently very kind of stylized, and I like that about them. So sometimes we don't see the good in our own work because we're worried about whether we're skillful enough to be very realistic yet. And know that if that's one of your goals, you can absolutely build your skill to do that, but also cherish the good things that you do in work that does have a stylized quality. I love the wings on the dragonfly on the left, and even the little wonderful, let's see if I can get my pen working on this, the little kind of goldish yellow brown dots on his body or her body. I love those kinds of details. I think those wings have a glowing quality to them that are quite lovely. So that's something I think that we should be celebrating in this work. I also really like the same thing in the photo of the bumblebee on the right side. You still have kind of this lovely transparent feeling and quality to them, and there's a real furry fuzziness to the bumblebee as well. So there's a really good use of texture in these paintings, and I think that's something really nice. Some things I would think about if I wanted to continue a series like this, I think I would study composition a bit. How can I arrange the objects on the surface of my painting to really help create the environment or mood that I want in the work? And I do have a blog post on 7 steps to a better composition. I'll try to look for it after the show's done and link it up in the kind of show notes at the header above the page when the video's done. Let me actually make a note of that right now. 7 steps. Okay. So that's something I'd think about for future work. I'm interested in her color choices. So the one on the right, I like the yellow and purple because they're opposites on the color wheel. So it creates kind of this visual vibration and it makes it a little more energized. So I feel like we're in this moment of watching this bee kind of land or look for flowers nearby. And I can feel some movement and energy. And it's also helped by the fact that it's on a diagonal. Diagonals also help create a feeling of movement in compositions. So we have kind of a diagonal movement, and that's also a way to create something that doesn't feel like it's just stuck in the moment. That being said, sometimes you want something to feel very still and quiet. So if you want it to feel that way, then it's better to work more vertically. We also have that movement with the firefly here of kind of the flying off into space. I don't know if it's my image or not. So one of the things in composition that can be interesting, and I mentioned it just before in Jen's abstract painting, is if we have something go off the edge of the painting in one spot, it's important to have somewhere else do that as well, and almost even three spaces. So there's part of me that kind of wonders if we cropped this a bit. Actually, let's see if we can do that. Let me see what that would look like. It might be too centered this way. I was kind of curious if we could even crop some of the tail, but you don't want it to be right on the edge either. That doesn't work quite right. Let me see if I can move it. So I'm just gonna, on a whim, try this. Let's see what it looks like. I don't know, but it's food for thought. And that's something I'd like us to think about too, is, see how cropping it changes the feeling of the composition entirely. So you can decide whether or not you like that, and that's totally fine. But playing with these kinds of ideas can help you make better decisions about compositions. And I think it's important when we're painting to think about where we want to place our objects and how it's going to work in the rest of the space. There's something called negative space, if you haven't heard of it before, and it's the space that exists around an object. So all of the red around this dragonfly is negative space. And the space those shapes create, the negative space and its shape itself, so the shape of the red, forget the dragonfly, if that's interesting, then that's another sign of a strong composition. So with the bumblebee, it's nice, the green is kind of our negative space. Oops, I've got the wrong tool. And I think it works quite well. There's a lot of movement here, and there's some really interesting shapes. They're kind of all different and dynamic, and I think that also speaks to a strong composition in this piece on the right. So I hope this gives you some food for thought. And again, guys, don't hesitate if you do refine an artwork or update it. I love sharing the before and afters in a future Feedback Friday. So please share with me a new work. If you do some new things and you want some other ideas, I really want to help you guys make the best decisions you can to make the art that you want to create. Okay, so I think we're done there. And it's 1:28 actually, so I don't know that I actually have time to finish all the art that I wanted to today. I am behind, so we've got one more artist today that I wanted to get to that I'm not going to be able to do today. Actually two, so maybe three even. So I will do those all next Friday, which you guys will have with me. Oh, that's kind of trippy. Let me close that out. So I look forward to sharing that work with you guys. As I get you really dizzy here. And I will continue to offer you guys feedback as quickly as I can. And if you would like to be part of a future Feedback Friday, don't hesitate to email me your art or links to your work or questions you have at carrie@artiststrong.com, or post it on the Facebook page or in the Facebook group. I really do want to help you guys make the art you feel called to create and give you the tools and resources to help you achieve exactly that. So thank you so much for being here and watching Feedback Friday with me. And I hope that I will see you join me live for a future Feedback Friday. Have an absolutely wonderful afternoon and rest of your day, wherever you are in the world.